Just press go live. Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live.
Okay, it's live now.
Oh, cool.
So, Jessica, what did you want to talk about today?
Well, I wanted to talk about all the money and time that science and industry are dedicating to discovering the next big thing.
You were telling me something earlier about this Reddit thread you found that this guy was doing some calculations. Can you tell me that again?
Definitely.
Okay.
Let me pull that up here. So this guy on Reddit was just inquiring about, I don't know for sure how to share my screen, but that's okay.
Oh, that's okay. You could just describe it. Yeah.
Just read it. Yeah. So he just inquired. He was like, how much would it cost to feed, clothe, and shelter every human being on Earth? And this guy went in on it, and based on average UK housing and prices of everything is what he based it on. And at the time, this was 5 years ago. So at the time, there's like 7 million people on Earth, roughly. And the total cost of everything was going to be $37 trillion.
So, like, basically for everybody to have their basics, I'm assuming, like house and stuff like that too.
Yep. So that's food, that's clothes, and a shelter.
$37 trillion. So, federal deficit, or no, federal debt. What is that? Let's see, 22.8 trillion. Right.
Oh, wow.
And what were you telling me? You were saying something also after you told me about that earlier, about you looked at all the richest people, their net worths all combined or something.
Yep. So the total number of billionaires in 2017 was 2,043 billionaires, and their combined wealth of known billionaires is $7.71 trillion.
Dang. So them alone, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so hold on. So that's about a fifth of what it would cost for everybody to have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of how like, think about this, how much of what they have is diminished from the perspective of what there could be if they weren't competing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because like, it's like there's competition which makes things somewhat more limited than if everyone was cooperating. So even just through competing, okay, and having the system the way it is, what do you say, like 2,000 people?
Yeah, the
2,000 people have $7 trillion.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And yet it would only take us 5 times that amount for everybody to have what they need.
Exactly. Yeah, and they could easily, if they were all working together and collaborating, they could easily 5 times their money. Each individually probably double their money.
Why haven't they all read Grant Cardone's book? Like, come on, guys, it's right there. Just 10x it and we're all good. You got twice the money right there.
Right.
Yeah,
but and it's even outside of just those people making money, though, because I'm sure some of them didn't necessarily make money through science or specific industries themselves. So if you look at like NASA per se, the United States alone spends NASA's budget is 19.3 billion. The United States federal spending in total is $3.95 trillion. And so, I mean, I see, space exploration is pretty cool, but, there's people dying, like over 20,000 children of
Well, you know why they're
causes.
exploring space, right?
Well, so that they can leave everybody here behind when it goes to crap.
So this is where all of our money in science is going to, is so that the elite can get the fuck out of here whenever people are. Yeah, right. I was just looking at while you were talking there. I don't know if you saw this. I typed into Google net worth of the world. It says, what's the total net worth of the world? So this is according to Credit Suisse. Okay, Credit Suisse Research Institute, the Global Wealth Report. The amount of total amount of global wealth in 2019 went to 360 trillion. So total net worth of the globe, there's 360 trillion. And yet people are still starving. There's still homeless people. There's still all these issues, right? So what is that? How is that net worth measured? Like, what is the worth? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's some people that are extremely rich. And then, so if you have all of the billionaires, but then what about all the millionaires? What's the total combined net worth of all of the top 1%?
Net worth of top 1%. Says $21 trillion in 2019 is what it's saying. The top 1% increased its total.
That doesn't make sense because the billionaires.
Oh, no. It's saying it increased since a certain time. It increased by that much. Let me see. I'm going to open the article itself. Top 1% up 21 trillion, bottom 50% down.
Oh, the problem is when I type net worth, it's like saying the net worth of the individual. Total
top wealth of top 1% and bottom 50%. This is kind of a harder stat to find.
Yeah, it's like I see wealth distribution, but it's all percentages. It doesn't say what the total.
Yeah. But it's interesting. It says that the top 1% since a certain time, right, was up by 21 trillion. But the bottom 50% of the 1% is down 900 billion. Isn't that interesting?
Wait.
The top half of the top 1%, right, since 19 whatever, is up 21 trillion. But the bottom 50% of those people are down 900 billion. So that means the top percent of the top percent are only going up, and then the bottom half of that 1% are getting weeded out, essentially.
Yeah.
But another point I want to focus on is, if you look at all the money getting put into, medical discoveries or space exploration or a new what is a new drug? It's not drug. It's what is it called? They want to give it to everybody.
The vaccine.
Literally the vaccine alone, all the money that they put towards that, I'm sure could have made a huge
They can come up with billions of dollars right there to give us a vaccine, but they're like, but
exactly.
Food, no, you got to get that yourself. It's like, if we all had food, we'd have a lot less disease. Oh, am I allowed to say that? I don't know. But it's like, come on, if we had proper nutrition.
Right, exactly. And so all of these industries, are focused on future things, or, getting famous for finding this next big thing. Mm-hmm. If everybody just focused on figuring out the problems that we had now, and then they could see, like, after everyone's fed, after everyone's housed and educated, that alone would increase our ability to discover even more profound things, because our collective investigation power, because everyone's like actually thinking critically and processing information instead of striving to survive, we could do even more and figure out even cooler shit because we're actually all focused on it instead of just trying to survive. But it's just the part of the 1% who want to find the next big thing that's only going to serve maybe a portion of the 1%, because as we just saw in this, it's from peoplespolicyproject.org, the bottom half of the 1% is getting weeded out anyways.
Yeah. And the issue though is, it's like, if you're Steve Jobs, mm-hmm. and you want to create an iPhone,
right?
Who's going to make all the iPhones?
Well, he has to put processes in place to create them.
So he needs slaves.
Oh, yeah.
So in that sense, to just create that one object, you need all these slaves, right? Mm-hmm. But imagine if everybody was at the level in terms of intelligence and so forth of Steve Jobs. You wouldn't have the slaves to create the iPhones, but then what could we create then?
Robots.
You see what I mean?
Robots
Like
can do
we
slave
could
work.
do so I'm just handling that objection for where it's like, but you need people to do the work. It's like, okay, but we're entering a phase of reality where we're not going to need that anymore anyways, even if that was needed in the past. Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. And I just see a lot of greed in that people see it as complete competition all over the world. I mean, like, we've ingrained it in our children since they were born. Like, oh, you know, what sports do you want to play? Here, try these out while you're young, and the one your favorites we can keep doing while you're older. Let's spend, you know, hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of dollars on you just to play the sports. You can compete and you got to be the best at it. So you got to do all the summer camps and you got to keep paying specialists to help you get better. And in America specifically, like, that's a huge thing. Personally, I went through that all since I was in 3rd grade, like, focused on competing. And so of course we're coming from that standpoint. And now everybody sees it as the only way that I can meet my basic needs and the only way that I can survive is by competing with the people around me. Instead of, you know, Jesus always said, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, right now it's compete with your neighbor or die.
How can you truly love your neighbor if you have to compete with them? If it came down to it, it was you getting a job and feeding your kids or them. Okay, let's say you're like, well, I would let them have the job. Well, I don't think your kids would like that. It's like, how do you love your kids then? It's like you have to choose, right? So, you know, it's interesting you brought that point up about Jesus, because 2,000 years ago, what was he saying? He's like, we need a system that's going to benefit everybody. Now, that's not what it says in the Bible, right? But it's like we're only getting the watered down, dumbed down, like one-liner, love your neighbor as yourself. But that's like when you give a speech, that's just like the headline. But what was it actually that somebody was saying? And if you look at it back then, 2,000 years ago, civilization was collapsing. That was right before the Roman Empire really fell apart. Right? And all the same problems that we're having right now, we were having back then. And you had somebody saying, we need a system where you can give as you want to receive. But everybody was so low information processing. And like, think about it. To your point about this, it's like civilization collapsed to the point where we had to reinvent science. I mean, like, we went to the dark ages. We had to rediscover science, right? And the scientific method. That's what they call it in the Enlightenment, right? And so if our society collapses right now, it doesn't just suddenly a new system pop up. And I think it's really cool, this point you're making, because it's like, okay, why is science focused on the next big thing, the next this, the next that, instead of, guys, our society is collapsing. If people don't have their basic needs, there's not going to be any more society. I mean, you're in Minnesota, you're in Minneapolis, right? So you know it probably better than anybody right now. It's like when the have-nots get angry, okay, it's not good. Right. And so the tiniest thing can spark and set people off and so forth. And you're starting to see that around the country now. And it's not really a science problem, because I think that's your point. It's like if science was the answer, we would have already done it, because we have it doesn't really take that much money. It doesn't really take that much technology per se. It's the starting point.
Exactly.
You know, and then all of the research that's done in the universities and so forth, it's all geared towards how can this make a company money, rather than how can this actually truly benefit. And now they've just changed the laws here. I was talking to someone about this last night. I guess in the past presidential administration or whatever, they changed the laws around patents, where now the university researchers themselves can apply for the patents for what they create.
Oh, wow.
So what that means is all the money we're putting in from our taxes and government into the universities to do research, to create stuff, the researcher themselves can just can own the patent and pocket all the money and do all the stuff. So it's like we as the collective, we're putting all this money into research and we're not even getting the benefit of that. Right? So it's insane. It's totally insane, right? So
and okay, say you want to play within the system that's currently in place, right? Okay. Well, if you look at the article that I sent you, it was from homelessworldcup.org. Okay. And it breaks down.
What's it called? Homeless World Cup?
Yeah. Homelessworldcup.org. And so it's one of the links I sent you. And in that site, it breaks it down by country, how much homelessness we have, right? And it talks about like how many people are below the poverty line, and there's like a even worse poverty line, things like that, right? Okay, well, how about 1 trillionaire or 1 billionaire? Excuse me. There's probably families that are worth trillions of dollars, but
well, Bezos just surpassed 200 billion.
200 billion.
Billion?
Okay,
yeah, billion.
well then
Seems so crazy, but yeah.
He can take care of a couple of the countries then. But what I'm saying is like, say a couple people come together and they feed, house, clothe, educate like a whole entire country through the systems that they create with the wealth that they have, then they could essentially have their name on that country, just like they have like in colleges, they have different education halls dedicated to different people. Well, have a whole country dedicated to yourself and have their minds work towards whatever you want to do then. Like if you think about it, like within the system we have in place, at least do that. Like obviously we'd want to like completely change the directive and the reason behind doing things, but it's also like the people are so inhumane that they can't even conceive of doing that. They don't even want to support anybody.
But look, it's not possible to do that, okay? Because the way you make money in the system is, and you're going to hear, in the books and all the stuff like, oh, you create value in the world and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you take advantage of the fact that most people don't have a proper education.
Yeah.
That's how you make money. Wow. So that's why there's so much manipulation in advertising and all this stuff, and in politics and everything. So if you as a billionaire decided to go and support this country and give them what's best, do you know what would immediately happen? All the other billionaires would come against you. All the other billionaires would come against you. All the major, like the WHO and the this and the that, those things exist to keep the system in place, not to actually help anybody. This is the thing people don't realize. Like when they hear, the WHO says it and they're the prestigious whatever. It's like, do you know who's the second biggest contributor after the US to the WHO?
No.
Bill Gates Foundation.
I did not know that.
He's the second biggest contributor above all the other countries that contribute to it.
Whoa.
And the US just pulled out of it. So they said we're not going to fund you anymore because they're really dishonest. So now literally Bill Gates is the biggest contributor to the WHO. And what is his whole goal? Is like just get everybody this vaccine. Or something like that, right?
He could have been let's solving hunger.
Right, but what I'm saying is he actually can't. He actually can't. Because that's not the rules of the system. The rules of the system are you don't do what's best for everybody. It's like I'm not saying it's a law that's written there. It's a consequence of all the subtle points. Like the law, for example, that say if you run a corporation, you have to be motivated for profit of your shareholders rather than doing what's best in a situation. So like literally, if you had to choose between, does it make them profit or is it actually best for the world? And you go with what's best for the world, the shareholders can sue you. You see what I mean? That's how our system works. So
that's why we have to create companies with our own shareholders who are in alignment with what we want to do.
Well, I had this really cool conversation with Müge. I was just talking to her like before my last meeting, so earlier today.
Yeah.
And she's a lawyer, right, in Turkey, and she was telling me this really cool point about because we got into the topic of equal money and like how that would work, because it's still something she said she's sort of trying to process and everything.
Yeah.
And I was kind of giving her my perspective of the progression of that, and then going into politics, changing the laws and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And she made this really cool point, and she could probably say it better than, because I told her, I was like, man, I wish you'd just make a video about this. But she was saying how whenever there's a new technology, rather, they have to create new laws around it. And those laws will generally supersede previous laws. So like her example was, she was talking about like data privacy. Okay. Right. And so like, for example, all the stuff on your phone can be hacked, right? So you have a lot of information on here. So the countries all had to implement laws around data privacy. So if you have a phone, there has to be certain software and protocols and stuff in place to make sure the data is protected and it can't just be hacked very easily or whatever the case is. There's data privacy laws, but those laws were created because this technology came forth.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the first point that I saw from that was like, okay, so in other words, it's not about, and she said, they supersede all the previous laws. Because, for example, before, when we had phones, they were just in our home, and we would go and then we would come back, and they would just stay in our home. But now they come with us. So it tracks our GPS. It tracks a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
It has like health data and steps you've taken, you know. So all the laws that were created for that kind of privacy protection superseded all the previous stuff. So it kind of like makes all the previous stuff obsolete in a way. Is what she was saying. So I was like, that's really interesting. So what it looks like to me is it's not about you got to go and change every fucking law. All you have to do is present a new technology and say, here's the laws that protect it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it supersedes everything else. So imagine a technology is our money system. So imagine we were come up with a new money system that says, here's how it works. Everybody gets X amount, blah, 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 blah. In order to prevent abuse of it, we have to have certain points in place and so forth to make sure, like one of those laws could be inflation. Like anti-inflation law, like, you know, because one of the arguments I always hear is if you give everybody money, all the products will raise. They'll raise all the prices. Well, not if everything was kept in a certain balance. You see what I mean? And it's like, well, we're not smart enough to do all of that. Well, we've already got the smartest people on the planet running the system. Yeah. And all they're doing is accumulating all the fucking wealth for themselves. So it's like, who cares if all the majority of the world suffers, as long as they have that right? That's what most people would think. So you'll have people argue who are not billionaires themselves will argue for the billionaire class to say, oh, but if they didn't have that, who would provide the jobs? Our society would collapse. It would all be communist and all this stuff, right? But it's really, I think, this fear of you missing out on the opportunity to be a billionaire. Whenever somebody defends like why we should have billionaires, it's like, well, because that it kind of creates this hopeful point of like, I could do that if I wanted to. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a subconscious point. But it's a program. Of course, the billionaires would want
from
you to
childhood,
defend them.
Your parents were like, oh, you could do whatever you want. You can become the president.
Oh, it's even deeper than that, Jess. What does it mean to defend minority rights? We're all saying, oh, we got to protect minorities. You got to protect minorities, right? So the minority groups should have power over the collective, yeah?
That's, I mean, essentially what it's saying, yeah.
So what that actually does is it doesn't actually protect minorities, okay? Because if that were the case, no one would be rioting right now, okay? All it does is subconsciously, we're all giving our consent rather, to a minority controlling everything. So what is the real minority that's being protected by the laws that are around money is the elite, is the billionaire class, is so forth.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? And we're getting, the programming is though, that we're thinking, oh yeah, minorities, minority rights. But when we say the word, is our vocabulary at the same level as theirs?
No.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, general average person speaking, we have technical terms.
Well,
I'm just saying,
for
all the normies out there, right? But what I'm saying is, we understand these points, right? So when they're saying minority, what do they mean? So if you put into a contract, we need to always defend minority rights. That's an agreement in this world. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, cool. So you can never challenge the fact that all the billionaires have majority of the wealth.
Right. Exactly.
And now think about this, all the riots and all this shit that's happening, who is it actually benefiting?
The elite.
Right. It's all a game.
Absolutely.
They're using the concept of protecting people's blah, 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 in order to protect their own stuff. Because if the United States becomes fractured, right? And then therefore, because of this civil war or whatever's going on, the government can't restore order. What is everybody going to beg for?
I don't know. What do they get?
They're going to beg for a world government. Meaning, meaning because that's already what's being argued right now about the coronavirus. It's being argued that because every country had a different response, they couldn't coordinate it. We need one government that coordinates everything.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing is, the reason why it's a different response in every country is every country is kind of different.
Exactly.
So just because you have one government coordinating it doesn't suddenly mean like if they say everybody has to do this, there's countries that have done the exact same thing where they had different results. So one got it right and one got it wrong, even though they did the same thing because it's specific to.
So in response to that, it's like, not only are these riots from like originating, is what they say, from this George Floyd thing, right? They started having all these riots across the world. It's not only here in America, like they had riots everywhere. And so there's a combination of multiple factors that are setting people off, and they're saying, oh, our government doesn't know what to do. And that's why they're all saying that. That makes total sense. But if you think about it, yes, each human's basic needs are different, or are the same essentially, but within each category, they're slightly different. Like someone who's diabetic is going to need something different than someone who's not diabetic. Someone who's a woman is going to need slightly different needs than a man.
Whoa, no, I'm kidding.
I mean, like,
these are controversial things in 2020 that you're saying here.
Well, yeah, but it's so true. You know, each individual person is going to need something slightly different. So people in Africa are going to need different resources than people here in the United States. I mean, like, you could look at that on a biological level, or you could look at that at a geographical level. Like different elements are going to play factor in that. And so if you have an entire world government, like, you would have to have factions of that world government anyways in order to fulfill each part's need. And that's essentially just saying what we have in place now.
Well, but what that would be, though, to be clear, is you and your country don't get to decide who's your representative anymore. You can't be trusted to know what's best for your group. Somebody up here
what's
decides.
Best for the elite?
But that's the point, isn't it? And so it's interesting because a lot of the things you see going on in terms of riots, protests, and so forth is ostensibly, you know, on the surface, arguing against fascism and government control. But that's actually what they're arguing for. It's actually what they're arguing for, and they don't realize it, because what they're saying is you don't want the US to have any sovereignty because it's racist, and there's all these reasons why we just need to get rid of it. So what you really want is somebody in a whole different place. Now, I'm not against one world government, just in case anybody thinks I'm like, you know, but at the moment right now, in the context of the way things are right now, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And especially if the model that's being applied to a one world government is not the freedom of the individual. Because like, in other words, if we reject American values, then what's the values that then run this one world government? Not everyone has a right to make a business. You know what I mean? Like that's who's, you know, that was the other thing that Muge was telling me is the politicians, when they're writing these laws about, like, for example, data privacy, they don't understand the technology. Who came up with the technology? The companies, right?
Yeah.
So what they have to do is tell the politicians, here's what you need to put in the laws, because we understand the technology. So basically it's the company essentially writing the laws.
Wow.
And that's, you know, lobbying and all that stuff too. But I was like, you know, that's really interesting. It's the companies that write the laws, because it's the companies that come up with the technologies, the products, etc. So you can't trust. How can you trust the politician to come up with the law to manage grain supplies, whatever? Like, they're not an expert in it. They're a politician. They're not the person producing the grain. It makes sense in the current context of the system to have that person deciding in a certain sense. But of course, if the system is the only reason they're producing grain is for profit, not to make sure everybody has it, well, then what's going to be the nature of the law that they write? Is it going to be to make sure everybody gets grain? Or to protect their profits. See, so again, it's not about the companies being bad or whatever. It's like, those are the rules. And if you're a company that's like, I'm going to just do what's best for everybody and all this stuff, but you don't want to play by the rules of making profit, you're like, I'm just going to give my product away for free to everybody. Okay, well, how do you eat tomorrow? You know, like, you're in the system. You have to be in the system. But everything, like, for example, what we're doing with TechnoTutor, everything is from the starting point of to be able to change the rules in the system. And it was really cool talking to Muge, because I saw that next piece of, like, I hadn't looked at it like that before. You know, that it's like, if you bring forth something, then you, in a way, get to decide how it's done. Of course, if you don't have the money to do it, you can't just be somebody who comes up with an idea and then, because you still have to have the money to influence the politics. And it'd be really good if you just went into politics, so you don't have to tell the politician what to do. You just do it.
Right.
You see what I mean? Just to be the politician. That's like what Trump did.
Exactly. That's a new phenomenon that's happening with Trump. he's one of the first people to do that, actually.
Right. He's proven that it's actually possible. Because, and I'm telling you, before 2016, I knew, and this is going back, right? But I knew he was going to win. Okay. I'm not the only person who knew that, but it was just being able to see what's being said on the internet, what the, you know, it's like if you only got your information from the news, of course you were going to think Hillary's going to, because that's what they were saying. But I don't even have a TV. So, I mean, I'm seeing the CNN stuff on Twitter, but, you know, I'm on Reddit and I'm on here. I'm like, dude, this, I see the support. I see what's going to happen. But this is what I realized too at the time. I said, he's either going to win, which he would based on the way he's doing the strategy and voting and all that stuff. I know he'll win. But if he doesn't, because I know he should, based on what I'm seeing, that would prove the system is rigged.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean, like there's nothing you can do, because
what
even
if you
get to that point, you're not going to win. And so what
about this year's election?
Are you asking me what I think is going to happen, or just what's the significance of it?
Is there a similar pattern that is arising in this election? Because I've been listening to a few different podcasts, and like Tim Pool specifically has brought up that exact same point, but within this election and not last election.
Okay. I'm going to go into a little quick area that I don't know if this is where you wanted this live stream to go, but since you're in Destiny and so forth, right? And I would just encourage anybody who's like, I don't know what this part you're talking about is about, just go investigate it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But when you look at things from that perspective, because normally I would say, look, I can't explain to you how I know this point, but something was done in the system so that it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only way a person can really understand what I mean by that is by going and looking in Destiny and understanding all of that context. Okay.
Yeah.
But the proof of it, even though it has nothing to do with Destiny, this point per se, is Trump winning. And so hear me explain what I mean by that. Meaning, just based on what I can see, what I can process, the elite thought that Hillary Clinton would win. And initially, prior to this, I was kind of thinking, oh, they knew she wasn't going to win. They're just lying. Like just trying to manipulate everyone into voting for her, because, you know, but it's like, but that clearly didn't work. But that's not what it was. Like, they didn't expect Trump to win. So in other words, like, imagine you're like the elite person, okay? However you want to imagine it, right? We are elite because we're in the 1%. Let's say I'm like the 1% of the 1%, right? The real super 1% elite. Okay. You assume everything's going to work out for you. Okay, perfect example. When somebody prays, what do they assume?
It's going to get answered.
Right. God, they fully 100% trust and believe that God is going to answer their prayers.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the elite too. They fully 100% trust and know that their God, which is the God of the system of this world and so forth. You could call it Satan if you want. Okay. I'm just kidding. But my point is, whatever they pray to, whatever.
Yeah.
They fully trust that it's because they're in the position they're in. They've been ordained by God, destiny, their genetics, and so forth. They're there to administer the system. It's all about the system. And it will always work. Like it's a perfect system. Okay.
I see that pattern now. And Trump winning last time was not.
They were like, whoa, what? That.
Yeah.
What? Okay. What the fuck? Like, what happened here? Okay.
Yeah.
Meaning, and it's not about me personally. It's just because of everything that what I participated with in Destiny and so forth. We could see like that already. Meaning, the system was already collapsing. Yeah. It was already like. And the evidence of that is the increase in mass shootings, the increase in mental instability of people. And so it's the acceleration of the mental inner turmoil of the human being. You're seeing that in the system at large now.
Oh yeah. Like there's evidence of that everywhere.
Right. So when you don't have the tools like Destiny, Technotutor, etc., when you don't have those points, you don't know how to process the inner points. It just starts going and going, and you participate in it and you make it worse. And it's like when you think a thought over and over and over, you start to then live it out.
Yep.
Right. So when you don't know how to stop the thought and disengage and not participate, forgive it, look at what you should be, what would be best to do and support yourself to walk through the resistance, all those points, you just start accumulating this little system inside of you, which is it takes over. And so we used to call that back a long time ago being possessed by a demon. But that's not exactly what it is. It's not like this other super worldly entity coming into you. It's just an informational construct that is put together with energy inside of you that you've created. It's like a little AI that you've built over time without realizing what you were doing. That from your perspective is, I think from most people's perspective is, it's like, it supports you to be happy, to find something that'll make you happy, and it helps you.
It's just like energy. A little ball of association.
Right, but what I'm saying is like the purpose of it within you is to like, it's your guide or something. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So like this thing I associate with negative emotions and negative feelings, and so I'm not going to go that way. But this thing, it's positive, and I always get positive feedback from, and like I enjoy my experience with it. And so it like turns into this character, and that becomes like your personality. And so then it's just like a ball of associations.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that particular point, it grows and grows and grows. And then because it's not designed in a way that's actually best, it comes out in some particular ways. And for some people, they get like the real extreme expression of that, which is like going and doing some kind of mass shooting or something. Some other people just like beat up their partner, or they yell at their kids, or they just get frustrated or whatever. But the point is, more and more people are starting to just not be able to handle it. And that's why I think with all of the writing and stuff that we're seeing, it's just like the perfect outlet for all of this shit. And so when you're being constantly propagandized by the media to think that Trump is Hitler, I mean, people think this thought and then they get angry, they put energy into it, they see it again reinforced from this, they think it again, and they just keep building this point within themselves.
Accumulation of experiences.
Right. And so that perception within them becomes their reality. You know, it's funny, I was going back and forth with somebody on your Facebook, one of your posts, right? And there's this point that people have that everyone has a different reality.
Right.
But I think what they mean by that is that everyone has a different experience of reality.
Yes. But they're limited. They can't see that because their experience is all they know. And that's the reality that they've created for themselves. And so they see it as subjective, when actually, if you look outside of just like the associations with the experiences you've had, and you just look at like what's happening around you outside of you, it's really not that different for each individual person. Like I said, there's some specifics that are slightly different within like where you're at, or who, or like biologically what you are. You know, there's different small variants.
if you took me and I took you and we switched places, would our experience be different?
So if you lived my exact life, but as you, would your experience be different? It could possibly be slightly different just because you are a male and I am a female. And there's different things that happened within my lifetime that were associated with me being a female.
Right. But what I'm saying though is, if I was you in your life.
You were
in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Same programming, everything.
Yeah.
So is your experience unique to you, Jess, or is your experience unique to your position in this reality?
Absolutely, position. That's why when I was going through different psychology and sociology classes and whatnot in college, I just kept coming to this same conclusion of all of these factors, like they're all saying, oh, I'm correct, or whatever. I'm like, why don't you just put all these theories together? Okay, look at like what standpoints are actually affecting you, like what is reality, not what's subjective, but what is like real. And then you can see that each individual person just lived their life and was affected the way they are because of geographically where they're at, or like the family dynamic they were in, or different things like that actually affected them. And if you, like you just said, took a different person, put them in, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just those slightly different factors that brought you to what you perceive to be your subjective reality of the accumulation of experiences that you had within geographically where you were, or physiologically, whatever. Like, it's so interesting, that point. And so people just come to this conclusion of like, no, reality is subjective because each individual's experience is different.
But isn't that obviously obviously a way to deal with the cognitive dissonance of I create my reality, wanting to believe that, but then not actually being in a having the actual ability to do it.
Oh, totally.
So it's like, well, I could just make shit up and then that's my reality. So everyone has a different reality. And it's like, well, no, we don't, because, okay, let me ask you a question. If you actually believe that you don't have to you don't have to consider how reality actually works, it's literally subjective, then do you eat food? Do you go to the bathroom?
Only because I want to. Only because I want to.
See, but that's where the self-honesty comes in, isn't it? Because it's like, no, that's, if you were being honest with yourself, which you can lie to another person, right? Like I could lie to your face and be like, no, I choose to do it. But I can't lie to myself. I know I'm lying to myself. I know I'm eating because that's my physical design. I don't have a choice. So it's like, at what point does your physical design, your environment, the physical reality factors of the way the relationships of everything is structured, at what point do you then go beyond that and it's just your personal, however you want to make it up? At what point? And then even if a person points out an experience, well, one time I thought this thing that totally wasn't real and then this really amazing thing happened. Okay, now replicate it. Do it again right now. You can't. Right. So what all that was occurring right there is that that was going to happen anyways.
Exactly.
You're just off in La La Land and you were programmed to have that experience. Right. And what that experience actually represents, because you were not here, is it represents something that's actually going to limit you and limit everyone else. So if you're going along with just where you're at and you're not actually directing every single point, then that means you're going along with the programming of the system. So the one point, it's so fascinating. The one point, if you actually want to have this point where you create your reality, it's your point. The only point where that exists is within your current life. Can you go against your programming and do what's best for all?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the only point you have a choice.
The only way to create in reality is to leave subjective reality that isn't real, because you can't actually create in reality if you are in illusion. And so that point is so clear to me. And the reason, like, within my, process of getting to this point and moving forward, it's become evident that it was all in the association to the feelings and emotions with anything, with my previous experiences. Like, I had these memories held inside of me of, like, food specifically. Oh my word. Since a child, I've had all these different things just boom, packed into me. And then when I'd hear the word food, or I'd see billboards, or I'd see advertisements, or I see other people eating food, whatever it is, I have these feelings and emotions held inside of me. And so I always reacted to food. And it was typically a negative reaction. It was like, food makes you fat. And then I think about all the different, like, eating disorders. And then I think about how some people can eat food and they still look this way. And then I have this illusion of what I think my body should look like. And food is the reason why I don't look like that. I mean, that's all, like, that is a subjective reality. That's all illusion. That's all just, like, something that I created in my mind, and none of that physically existed. None of it.
And look at the context of food. Is everybody guaranteed to have food?
No.
And is everybody, and even the people who do have guarantee of food in a certain sense because of their ability to make money, are they guaranteed proper nutrition within that?
No.
Because they may not even know what proper nutrition is for their body. And the food that they are able to afford may not include that, but likely they don't even know. But then also, what's the purpose of food advertising?
Food advertising is to make you emotionally, it's to trigger you emotionally and to create an attachment to the emotion of the food. So when you eat it, you have this emotion, and it doesn't actually nourish your body. Right. And it just leaves you craving more because you didn't get nourished in the first place.
Well, if I'm a company that's producing food and is advertising to you, I'm trying to do it so you'll go and want to eat my food, whether you need it or not.
Exactly.
So all advertising is done from the perspective of greed. And it plays in.
I'm loving it.
Right. So if a person, for example, says, okay, it's like you have to be honest about the influence that this reality has had, which would be like the epigenetic point, right? That it's had on shaping your beliefs and your opinions. And so what most people will do, and I had to face this myself, is you'll look at what you believe and feel, and you take that for granted.
Yeah.
And then from there, now you want to negotiate with reality about trying to get what you want. And it's like, you don't realize you've been programmed to want these things and feel these things.
Exactly.
And we did a podcast, I forget which one it was, what episode, but it was the one about feelings versus principles or something like that, right?
Yep.
And it's like, or maybe it was the one about God. I don't remember which one it was, but the point is starting point. Was one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
The point is like looking at, okay, if I believe something, or I have a conclusion that I've come to, being able to go back and look at, okay, but why do I believe that? And why do I believe that? And where did that come from? And where did that come from? And the thing is, most of it, as you know, it's like comes from when you were like 2 years old or 3 years old.
Yep.
You didn't even have the vocabulary to understand what was happening. It just got put right into you. So you can't even consciously know where this came from. You see what I mean? So those layers and layers.
Why is that? What those first few years, why are the children getting all that? What is that specific point? It's the natural learning ability. Your brain is wide open during that time. And so anything that's around you is getting impulsed. Well, your brain literally creates connections, like physical connections. And then it runs those connections for the rest of your life unless you take responsibility and change them. And there are ways that you can do that. We are literally doing that right now.
That's why we have different cultures.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? We have different cultures because if you put a child in an environment where everybody's doing something, then they become that. So that's the evidence of what you're saying is true. So it's like if you speak a language, you're brainwashed. You can't say, I create my own reality. It's like, do you speak a language? Because if you do, you're literally subject to the programming of your environment. And there's nothing you're doing. That's your choice because it's all in the context of the language you speak. Right. And so going back to the point about like science and all of this is like, people will put a lot of faith in that science is going to solve all the problems. But look at, for example, what Elon Musk is doing with this Neuralink thing, right? Because I remember you sent me a message about it a while back because someone was asking you about it. And it's like, what is the purpose of it? Is it going to make the average person able to process information, able to process their emotions, able to change what was the programming that was put into them in the first 7 years of their life?
No, it's gonna make the technology be able to process what your desires are faster.
That's a really good point. So in other words, you put that in here. Now somebody with a computer has access to everything going on in here that can be measured. It's not giving you the ability to think better and faster and understand more or any. You say, well, but I have Google in my brain. It's like, I can show two different people the same web page and they totally understand it differently because of the difference in their vocabulary. It's not going to increase your ability. And so I see all these people posting like the future, like, oh, this is the next level. And so what they're doing is just sitting back at home on their computer, watching Netflix all day, doing fuck all with their life and going, oh, Elon Musk is so amazing. He's changing the world. And it's like, it's not going to benefit you. It's just going to give the elite access to your body and to your mind and allow you, like, imagine
targeted
you have this chip in your
on a whole new level.
Right. It's like I was saying the other day, like, imagine you have this chip in your brain and then you're like, man, I really want some pizza right now. And you're like, is that the chip talking to me? Or do I actually want the pizza? You're just going to make people insane.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, fuck, is Elon Musk program me to want this Tesla or do I actually want this Tesla? You know what I mean? Like, how could you trust? Imagine Jeff Bezos getting access to that.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, why
all those products on Amazon?
And it's like, there's a little disclaimer on this package you bought. And it's like, our AI detected that you were potentially going to think about this and therefore we ordered it for you. And it's in your fine print. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't even refund it. It's like, we already knew you wanted it. But how does that, so it's like that people think that sounds great because like, oh, this technology is giving us everything we want. No, it's not, because you don't actually know why you want the things you want. Just like you were talking about with the food, you're doing that very difficult process of going back and figuring out why do I feel this way about foods and this way about my body and so forth? It's like, there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. It's not like you just think about it. Would you really want access to a button that can give you anything you want if you're still in the programming state that you were in of all that dysfunction around food?
No.
Like, imagine if you could just snap your fingers and instantly manifest every desire inside of you. You see what I mean? Like horrible. That. And yet people think that when they go to heaven, that's what they're going to have. But they're not willing to look and investigate in real time when you have the time and space to figure out why are these things manifesting. So you have the manifesting things in your world, but you have the manifesting things in the world also, the world outside of us. And so when we bring up the point of okay, here's another thing for you. This is just for you to consider. Okay. And you may have already considered this, right? But people are gonna attack you.
Oh yeah.
Because you're standing up for something and you're saying, we have a solution. We have the solution. We have to consider these points. I'm still walking my process, but this is what we're doing. And this is how we can support the world to become best for all. Definitely. People are going to stand up against that. And the one thing they're going to really do is become spiteful because they're jealous. Because they're watching your life and they're seeing that you're getting the things that they want, but they're not willing to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then they're just going to become jealous and nasty and spiteful. So when I see people,
they're reacting.
Right. Which is actually really cool. And that's why, generally speaking, it's like, if somebody reacts to me, I will continue to act the way that you're judging me as, because that's what you need. Not always 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, it's, you be flexible with things, but generally speaking, it's like, if somebody says, wow, you're such an asshole, and it's simply because I said something that, they needed to hear, but then they react to it. I don't then go, oh wait, hold on, I'm sorry, let me change that.
Yeah,
it just depends on the context. Like, maybe in that context it could make sense, but the reason I'm saying that is because you're going to get attacked, Mitch. You guys are going to get attacked. People are going to be jealous, they're going to be spiteful, they're going to be nasty. But the reality is, if you don't back down, if you continue to stand with certainty, they will see that and they'll be like, okay. Because even if there was two best ways to do this, if half of us focus on one and half of us focus on the other, is it going to work?
No.
So there can only be one best way logically, and we have to all get on board with that. And the thing is, that's so cool about this is you and me, no one can control any other person to do it. Our whole purpose is to just support people to wake up,
first to do it themselves.
And then secondly, to do it themselves, to take the responsibility of going through their layers of programming. And like, isn't that really what scientific thinking and scientific method is?
Absolutely.
If you believe something and you think something is true, shouldn't you test it? If you actually think, for example, oh no, I mean, I can believe something that's the opposite of reality, and therefore it can manifest something really amazing. Okay, replicate it. Prove it to yourself. Test it in areas, like test it in every possible way you can. That's what rigorous scientific method and scientific thinking is. It's really testing your belief. And for example, I'll just give you an example with our kids. With their ability to read, for example, with Max. When we teach him something in Technotutor, I then will ask him about it later. I'll show it to him. I'll write it down. I'll have it in a book that's like something he's never seen before with no pictures. I'll be like, hey, what is that? Like, in other words, we try. I'm going to be careful how I say this. It's like I try to trick him, meaning it's like, if you don't actually know it, you're not going to be able to get it. You see what I'm trying to say? In other words, it's like testing.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, what is it now? Like, okay. Or you might say, present it as one thing to see if they're just going to go along with it because they're agreeing with you. And they're like, no, that's not what it is. So like, Max corrects me all the time. Like, I'll be like, hey, Max, can you pick up that resistor on the floor? And he'll go, that's not a resistor. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not a resistor? He's like, look, it's green. It's an inductor. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. I'm like, that's actually really cool. I'm glad that he has that level of fucking discernment as a 3-year-old to be able to do that. But my point is, it's like, we always put it to the test. We don't just go, I believe Technotutor is the best, so we put our kids on it and we just pretend that they're smart. Like, no, I try to prove to myself that it doesn't work.
Right.
You see what I mean? I try to prove to myself and that's why, like, for example, when you guys came and stayed here, if I really wasn't sure, why would I want you guys to come here? I'd be like, well, I mean, I don't want them to spend a whole week with me. They might see that we're actually really shitty parents and our kids are actually retarded and fight with us and beg and whine all the time. Instead, I'm like, hey, that's cool. Even if there is a little bit more conflict, at least you'll get to see that we apply the points. Even if it's not the picture perfect thing people are imagining it to be, at least you'll see when there is conflict, we still come back to the principles, apply the points, we work through the point, and then it's all good. And you'll notice when you were here, there was no drama points. You know what I mean? There was no like, oh, it's a big thing happening right now and we got to just all be upset about it. It's like, if anything arose, it was like, okay, we deal with it, done, okay, move on. And we all had a great time.
But guess what? That microcosm of that principle should be applied everywhere.
Yeah. What do you mean?
People don't understand that it's a process to create a world that's best for all. It's going to take trial and error. It's going to take, different people in different positions and then realizing this isn't the right position for me. It's going to take, all of this process to get us to that point. But people are so ingrained with instant gratification that they're like, if you think that this system is right, then you should know exactly how it should work before we even vote for you to do it. And it's like, that doesn't even make any sense. It's literally a process to get to this point. And so people have to raise their ability to process information to even be able to see like, hey, these people actually are doing this for what is best for every human being on earth. And it's going to take time and it's going to take a process, but I can see that they're actively living this out in their personal life, in their business, like everything. You stand in your principles. So then they can see, well, obviously I'm going to vote for this person because they actually have integrity and I can see evidence of that within their lives. And so that's what we're going to create a whole system of within like politics and things like that in our businesses on a larger scale. And so that's what I see when I say that. It's like, it's a process, and that's what's going to either turn people away or help people see not only why we should be in these positions, but also turn them to be able to walk this process for themselves, because they will develop that patience by observing it within us of, hey, it's not going to happen overnight. Not every single billionaire is going to be on track. Most of them aren't, because they'll see like, hey, these guys get it and they're going to evenly distribute all this stuff. And so
when they're doing what they're focused on, I don't have a problem with Jeff Bezos creating Amazon.
Right.
Like, we want that system. Like, that's great. That system is an amazing system. Like, I'm totally okay with Elon Musk creating Tesla self-driving cars and stuff. Like, that's all really cool. You know what I mean? So the problem is when you have this point within you, just a person generally has this point where it's like, the billionaires are the problem. They need to change. It's like, but then you have the other side where people try to argue, well, if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have anything today. So they need to continue just existing and we can't change the system. And it's like, why not both? Why isn't it cool that they're doing all this stuff? But then it's actually the 99.9% that's the problem.
Right.
Because you can't, and this is the same thing with all the stuff going on with the riots and everything. It's like, if these group of people that you don't like are so evil and have oppressed some people so much, why are you telling them to change? They're evil. They're not gonna. Like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, but they're perpetuating the system that those evil people created.
Right. That's the point. Is like, you've actually benefited. And so the other problem though is, now what I'm seeing is it's all just trying to be torn down.
Right.
What is being torn down though is not the system. It's actually the only last point that's like any way through. Meaning the concept of the United States as like, you have a right to individual freedom. Like, you are as important as an individual as the government.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? The government should be there to serve you. Now, I know in practice, that's not how it actually works in the US. I get that. Like, it's been hijacked, but the concept is still there. And if we say, no, fuck all that, tear it down, it's not like suddenly over here in Europe or somewhere else, they're like, oh yeah, we value freedom and all. No, it's going to be literally what they're doing in China. It just goes everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is it not is it not a coincidence, okay, that Trump is attacking China, saying, hey, China's fucking everybody over, they're trying to do all this stuff, and then suddenly everyone's wearing masks?
Right.
That's something you would expect to see if you go to China.
Exactly.
And also think about this. They all started, this is a joke, but if you go like these major cities, everybody's driving scooters and stuff. It's kind of like everybody on bikes over there. Yeah, I mean, but that aside, my point is, it's like if the concept of the individual being sovereign falls, the people who are running the show do not value the mass majority. And there's like this belief that suddenly a communist utopia will step forth because there won't be any power structures trying to hold us down. But the last time I checked, most of the people out there in the streets that are protesting, none of them know how to farm. Right. None of them know how to manage a supply chain. None of them know any of the practical things that they're benefiting from right now. It's like protesting while you're drinking Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like
there are people that do that.
I know this. I mean, I used to live in Portland, right, for like several years. So nothing that's happening there is surprising to me at all. I'm like, oh yeah, that was expected. I mean, it's about time. It's insanity there, right? So it's interesting to me that it's really heavy also in like Silicon Valley in that area, because why is it the people who seem to benefit the most from inequality push all of this stuff the most? Because it benefits them actually. You know, and if you really believe that wealth inequality is a problem, which it is, but if you actually believed it in the sense of, you know, we just need to redistribute the money and whatever, you would just give your money away. It's like when Warren Buffett says the government should just tax him higher. It's like, why don't you just give the government your money then? Like, what are you waiting for? Like, you've been a billionaire for however fucking long and you still haven't done it. And it's like, well, when I die, I'm going to give my money away. But what these billionaires do when they give their money away, you know where it goes?
It goes into sometimes charities that perpetuate the system that's in place right now.
You know, Bill Gates gave all his money away, right?
All of it.
Yeah, well, most of it.
I did not know that.
Where he gave it to the Bill Gates Foundation. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, right. Like, meaning now he's operating a company that's a not-for-profit, which means he's not even having to be held to the profit rule anymore. He can just do what the fuck he wants with it.
Wow.
So it's like people think that he's this amazing charitable guy because he gave his money to charity. It's like, no, he didn't. He gave it to himself so he can then go play the game at a whole nother level. He became
so
more
he
powerful.
Have to pay taxes.
He's become more powerful in the system. You see what I mean?
It's crazy.
So again, it's not about bashing the billionaires and all this stuff. It's just realizing that if you're on the side of, I'm not a billionaire, but I'm also not in absolute abject poverty right now. But you're fighting against the concept and the implementation of a world that's best for all. How is that going to work out in your favor? And so that's why it's like when I'm talking to people, I'm not talking to Elon Musk. I'm talking to the average person who's like, I see there's problems in this system. But firstly, you recognize there's problems in the system in here. That's why your life sucks. That's why you can't keep a relationship. It's why your kids don't like you. It's why your job sucks. All these things because of what's going on in you. It's not because someone's oppressing you. It's because
it's because they aren't actually here. It's because they're only in here.
Right.
And of course, everybody around you is going to hate you. And of course, your life isn't going to work out. That's because you're not even living your life. You're living in an altered reality in your mind. It doesn't even make any sense. Of course, you live in a system that's broken and you think you have no control over it. That's because you're not
participating in it. Really,
participating.
You're not directing it. Exactly.
You're not directing your participation in the system because you're participating in your mind, and the system knows that. So it's directing, and it's literally conditioning you to exist the way you are in the system, so you don't create a new system.
Right. Exactly. So we've been programmed. We've accepted this point that we have our life and our truth and our happiness, which is, like you said, it's like this game you're playing up here while somebody else is physically directing your body into doing the things they want through media and advertising and so forth. So all these people out there protesting and rioting, in their minds, do you know what the game is they're playing? They're like superheroes, like fighting a revolution. That's what they're imagining that they are. But in reality, they're just being used to just, it's like when you look at the economic cycles, you have economic collapse, but the final phase of economic collapse is physical war. And that's used to destroy capital, to destroy property. So it's like it's like kind of how you reset the economic cycles. So you get all these people out there. It's like in the past you would have armies, right?
Yeah.
But now you just have all these people who have nothing better to do, and you just program them with brainwashing, with ideas of all this bullshit, and you get them to go out and destroy shit. And then you also lock everybody in their homes because they're afraid of a virus, which, you know, did you see about the WHO? Sorry, the WHO, the CDC. They just revised their
oh yeah, what were the numbers that they revised it to again?
They said it was 156,000 people that had died from coronavirus, right? But when they factored in, they did the audit of the people who actually died of the virus and not from just some comorbidity, like they had diabetes and were 500 pounds or whatever. Or they got hit by a car when they were coughing.
Or they died from cancer or something like that.
Right.
They had the coronavirus in them.
Or they coughed and somebody was like, you must have had it. Okay, coronavirus.
Oh yeah.
Right. When they did the audit, 94% of those cases went away. It was like 6,000 people.
94?
Yeah.
So only 6,000 people in the United States actually died.
Yeah, whatever the specific number is. Yeah, actually died from it. Now, I'm not saying this. This is just what the CDC is saying.
Wow.
But now think about that. If you take that information and say, hey, look, you see the problem? It's okay. What the average person who's like totally bought into it is going to do, they're going to say, yes, but, and then they're going to go into something else.
Yep.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They're not actually interested in the truth of the matter. They're interested in what makes them feel self-righteous within their fighting against Trump or the system or whatever the fuck it is. They're not interested in being here. Right. You know, and it's like, if you believe that you can just believe whatever you want and everything's going to magically work out. What if I, as a parent, said, you know what? I believe that I'm a creator, infinite creator. I can choose my reality. I'm just not going to feed my kids anymore because I don't need to do that. Like, you should go to jail if you do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why should we allow people to have that belief about any part of reality if it affects other people?
Right.
Because because that person is going to go vote. That person is going to go protest. That person is going to go share their bullshit opinion on a post that you made to try to bring people away from what you're saying to their little bullshit party. And they have no solution. They have nothing to offer, if anything. They actually just want a little following of their own. And that's what you're going to find. The people that attack you and say that you're trying to control people and all this stuff, they're just jealous. They want a following for themselves. And it's like, dude, I don't want anyone to follow me. I'm just living my life. I have my own family. Go make your own family. Just do what the things we're suggesting. I don't need you to follow anything.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, perfect. So that's a great, I think, way to wrap it up here today. Is just like, it's not about the following. It's about showing how you can take responsibility and start this process, and how it is a process and it's not instant perfection. Just like all these companies and all these sciences and stuff, like they sometimes had thousands of trial and error before they figured out the right way to do it. Well, that's the same process that we're going to be walking, but it's not just for one new discovery. It's for something that is actually going to support the entire world. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Cameron, thank you for your time today. I'm super excited to hop on live streams with you more often. And
I think we'll have to have you come on the podcast too.
The podcast. Yes, that would be awesome. Plug that. Everybody look at his shirt, self-perfected.com. Yeah. Listen to the podcast. It is fantastic.
No, I'm saying I want you to come on the podcast.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I will. Okay. But I'm also promoting the podcast. Okay. I listen to them all and I love it. So.
Hey, and you know what? I'm not even promoting merch because you can't buy these. So I just want it.
Not yet. Okay, awesome. All right, cool. Thanks, Cameron.
All right, bye. Talk later.